My name is Lauren Holloway, and I am 34 years old. I built my father a $325,000 house so he would never end up in a nursing home. 3 weeks ago, I pulled up to that house and found him trembling on the front porch while a stranger stood in the yard photographing every inch of the property. I got out of my car. The man had a clipboard and a professional camera. My dad gripped the porch railing with both hands, his knuckles white, and he was not looking at me. He was looking through the front door. I rushed inside, and what I saw made my stomach drop, because sitting at my father's kitchen table with a stack of legal documents and a smile I had not seen in 7 years was my brother. Before I take you back to that morning, let me take you back 4 years ago to the day I first realized my dad was losing his grip. Not on his mind, on the doorknob. It was a Tuesday evening in late October, and I was standing behind my father in the hallway of the house my mother left behind. He had both hands wrapped around the knob of the kitchen door, a round brass knob, the kind that requires a full grip and a twist. His fingers swell at the joints. His right thumb will not bend past 45 degrees anymore. He pulled. The knob slipped. He readjusted. Pulled again. The door did not move. I was 3 steps behind him with my phone in my hand, pretending to check a text message so he would not know I was watching. Gerald Holloway does not ask for help. Not when his truck broke down on Route 9 2 winters ago. Not when he carried my mother's casket with a torn rotator cuff. Not now, 40 seconds. That is how long it took him. He finally got the knob to turn by pressing his palm flat against it and using his forearm for torque. The door swung open and he walked through like nothing had happened. But I saw his jaw clench. I saw the 2 seconds where he closed his eyes. The house was falling apart around him, peeling paint around the bathroom window. A porch step that dipped when you put weight on the left side. The water heater made a sound at night like someone knocking from inside the basement. My mother had kept up with all of it. 5 years after her funeral, the house had started forgetting her too. Dad settled into his chair at the kitchen table. Same chair, same spot, same mug. The blue one with the chipped handle that my mother had bought at a craft fair in 2011. He wrapped both hands around it carefully, like he was holding something alive. That was the first time I understood. My father did not need someone to take care of him. He needed a house that would not fight him every time he tried to live in it. I should tell you about Ethan. My brother is 4 years younger than me. When we were kids, he was the one who could make Dad laugh. Really laugh. The kind where his shoulders shook and he would slap the table. I was the responsible one, the one who balanced my mother's checkbook when I was 14. Ethan was the spark. He had that effect on people. He left 7 years ago. The fight was about my mother's house, this house. She had been gone for 2 years by then. I wanted to keep it for Dad. Ethan wanted to sell it, split the money, and use his share for a tech company he was launching with a college friend. Dad sided with me. Or maybe Dad just did not want to leave. Ethan took it personally. He said things at the kitchen table that night that I've never repeated. He packed a bag and drove to Nashville before sunrise. The calls came less and less. Once a month, then once a quarter, then just a text on Dad's birthday. Sometimes on the right day, sometimes a day late. But here's the thing about Gerald Holloway. Every single time I came through that front door, he asked the same question. Has your brother called you? And every time I gave the same answer. Not yet, Dad. He kept a photo of Ethan on the refrigerator, pinned with a magnet from a bait shop we used to visit when Ethan was 10. Ethan in a baseball cap, holding up a bluegill, grinning like the world owed him nothing. Dad never took it down, never moved it. If I brought groceries and the magnet shifted, he fixed it before he put anything away. I did not know then what 7 years of silence actually meant. It did not mean Ethan had forgotten about this family. It meant he was waiting for something worth coming back for. I make decent money, not great money. I am a CPA at a regional firm in Hadley, the kind of place where everyone knows your car in the parking lot. I have been there 11 years. I know how to stretch a dollar, and more importantly, I know how to build a plan with a 4-year horizon. Year 1, I cut my rent by moving into a smaller apartment. I sold my Camry and bought a 9-year-old Civic with cash. I started picking up freelance tax clients during filing season, small businesses, sole proprietors, the kind of returns nobody at the firm wanted. Year 2, I found the lot. 2 acres on Teller Lake, 20 minutes from my apartment. Quiet road, no neighbors in view. The previous owner had cleared the land for a cabin that never got built. Year 3, construction. I spent 4 months researching universal design before I ever talked to a contractor. Lever handles on every door. You push down with one finger and it opens. No steps at any entrance, just gentle ramps with non-slip composite. Grab bars in the bathroom that look like towel racks. A kitchen with pull-out shelves and countertops at 2 heights. And in the back, a small workshop. A proper woodworking bench set at standing height so he would not have to bend. Pegboard walls for his tools, good light because Gerald Holloway was a carpenter for 41 years. He built other people's kitchens, their decks, their bookshelves. His hands might shake now, but the knowledge in them was still there. I was not going to take that from him by putting him somewhere with fluorescent lights and a shared TV room. Year 4, I finished. And I did not tell Dad any of it. Not because I wanted to surprise him, because I knew he would refuse. Gerald Holloway does not take gifts. Not from anyone, not even from his daughter. The day I brought him out to Teller Lake, I told him we were going to look at a property for a client. He rode shotgun, one hand on the dashboard out of habit, the way he always rode. When we pulled up, he looked at the house and said nothing. He got out slowly, walked up the ramp to the front porch, and ran his hand along the railing. Cedar, sanded smooth, the kind of wood he would know by feel. He went to the front door and reached for the handle. A lever. He pressed down with his palm. The door swung open without resistance. 1 hand, 1 second. He stopped. Then he walked the entire house without saying a word. He opened every cabinet, tested the pull-out shelves, turned the faucet on and off, went into the bathroom, and touched the grab bars like he was checking if they would hold. When he reached the workshop, he stood in the doorway for a long time. The tools were hung on pegboard, his chisel set, his block planes, his marking gauge. I had taken them from the old house while he was at a doctor's appointment. The bench was maple, 3 inches thick, set at exactly 36 inches. Good light from a south-facing window over the lake. He turned around and looked at me. His eyes were wet, but he did not cry. Gerald Holloway does not cry. You did this? He asked. I nodded. He put his hand on my shoulder, and I realized his hand was not shaking. For the first time all day, his hand was completely still. That was 2 months ago. 2 months before I drove up and saw my father trembling on the porch. But this time it had nothing to do with his arthritis. 3 weeks after Dad moved in, I took him for a routine checkup at the Hadley Medical Group. Dr. Simmons was thorough. Blood panel, joint assessment, the usual. Dad sat on the exam table in a flannel shirt and jeans, looking like he would rather be anywhere else. Mr. Holloway, your joints are stable, Dr. Simmons said, flipping through the chart. The inflammation markers have not increased since last quarter. You are managing well. Dad straightened up a little. He liked that word, managing. Independent living is feasible, Dr. Simmons continued, as long as the accommodations stay appropriate. The house modifications you described are exactly what I would recommend. He wrote it in the chart. I know because I watched him write it. And after the appointment, I took a photo of the summary sheet the nurse printed out. Force of habit. I am a CPA. I photograph every document that matters. Bank statements, tax filings, medical records. My phone is an archive. Dad was walking better since the move. The flat floors helped. The lever handles meant he was not fighting doors 6 times a day. He told me last week that he made a birdhouse in the workshop, his first project in almost 2 years. Small, little rough at the joints, but finished. He ate 3 meals a day. He walked down to the lake in the mornings when the weather allowed. He was not recovering. The arthritis was progressive, and we both knew it. But he was living. There is a difference between a body that is declining and a life that is shrinking. And for the first time in years, my father's life was getting bigger. I drove home that evening feeling something I had not felt in a long time. Peace. It lasted exactly 18 days. Here is something I need you to understand about the lake house. It was in Dad's name, not mine, not jointly. His name, his property, his deed. I did that on purpose. I could have kept myself on the title. My lawyer suggested it actually as a basic asset protection measure. But I thought about the way Dad looked when he opened that front door. The lever handle, the 1-second motion, the way his shoulders dropped like he had set something heavy down. Gerald Holloway had spent his entire life being told what to do by foremen, by clients, by the VA when he came back from the service, by doctors who talked about him in the third person while he sat right there. My mother was the only person who ever treated him like a full human being. After she died, the world went back to managing him. I was not going to build him a house and then hold the leash. So the deed was his. which meant if anyone convinced him to sell that property, I would lose every dollar I put into it. $325,000. 4 years of savings, freelance work, and a lifestyle I stripped down to the studs. No legal recourse, no lien, no fallback. I knew the risk when I made that choice. I accepted it because the whole point was that the house was his. But there was one thing I did not account for. When Dad was 64 7 years ago, he opened a savings account at First Federal. He added Ethan's name to it, a joint account for emergencies. In case something happens to me, he told Ethan, you can access the money right away. Ethan was 23. He had just gotten his first apartment in Nashville. Dad never closed that account, and neither did Ethan. I checked Dad's bank statements on the first of every month. Same routine I use for my clients. Download, review, flag anything unusual. Most months, it was groceries, a hardware store charge, his Medicare supplement. Clean and predictable, the way a retired carpenter's finances should look. On a Thursday morning in April, I opened the statement and stopped scrolling. A withdrawal, $2,800. An ATM in downtown Nashville. Dad had not been to Nashville in over a decade. He did not travel. He barely drove past the county line. I called him that afternoon. Dad, did you take any money out of your savings recently? A large amount? Silence then. No. How much? $2,800. I did not take out any money, Lauren. He sounded confused. Not scared, confused. Like someone had just told him a fact about his own life that did not match his memory. I pulled up the account details that evening. The withdrawal was made using a debit card linked to the joint account at First Federal, the one with 2 names on it, Gerald Holloway and Ethan Holloway. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. The math was simple. There was only one other person with access to that account, and he lived in Nashville. So I picked up my phone and called a number I had not dialed in years. My brother's cell, the old one, the only one I had. I expected voicemail. I expected a disconnected number recording. I expected dead air. He picked up on the first ring. Lauren. His voice was warm, immediate, like he had been sitting by the phone. Oh my God, I was just thinking about you. My chest went tight because in 11 years as an accountant, I had learned one thing. When the numbers do not add up, the story someone tells you next matters more than anything. Ethan, it has been a while. Too long, he said. Way too long. How is Dad? He asked about Dad first. That was deliberate. I knew it was deliberate because Ethan had always been good at steering a conversation before the other person got their footing. I did not let him. There's a $2,800 withdrawal from Dad's savings account, an ATM in Nashville, 3 days ago. The pause was short, half a second. Most people would not notice it. Oh yeah, Dad said I could use it. I am in kind of a tough spot right now, Lauren. Between things, Dad says he did not authorize it. A longer pause this time. I could hear him shift. Maybe a chair. Maybe a couch. He forgets things, Lauren, you know that. His mind is fine, Ethan. I'm just saying he is 71. Things slip. I took him to the doctor 3 weeks ago. Cognitive function is normal. It is in the chart. Another pause. I could hear him recalculating. That was the thing about Ethan. When one angle did not work, he did not push. He pivoted. Look, he said, and his voice softened. I know this looks bad, but I am actually planning to come visit. I want to see the house. I miss Dad. You miss Dad? I do. I really do. I have been thinking about it a lot lately. Getting older, you know. Priorities change. He sounded sincere. That was what made Ethan dangerous. Not that he lied, but that he believed himself while he was doing it. When? I asked. This weekend, actually. I was going to call you. Is that the housewarming thing? Dad mentioned it. My stomach tightened. Dad had told him about the housewarming, which meant they had been talking, which meant this call was not the beginning of something. It was the middle. I am his son too, Lauren. Or did you forget that? I hung up without answering. I drove to the lake house the next morning. Dad was on the porch drinking coffee. The mug was a new one, ceramic, wide handle, easy grip. He had bought it himself at the hardware store in town. Dad, I talked to Ethan last night. He set the mug down and there it was. A smile I had not seen since the day he walked into the workshop, wide open. The kind of smile that came from a part of him I could not reach. He is coming home. His voice cracked on the word home. Not from weakness. From want. He says he is coming for the housewarming. Good. That is good. He picked the mug back up. His hands were shaking, but this time it was not the arthritis. It will be good to have both my kids in the same room. I sat on the porch step and looked at the lake. There was a heron standing in the shallows, perfectly still, waiting for something underneath the surface. Part of me wanted to tell Dad everything. The withdrawal, the way Ethan's voice had shifted 3 times in a 4-minute call, the fact that he had known about the housewarming before I mentioned it, which meant he and Dad had been in contact and neither of them had told me. But I looked at my father's face and I could not. Not yet. And then a worse thought crept in, one I did not want to admit. Was I protecting Dad? Or was I protecting my own position? Because if Ethan came back and Dad welcomed him, what did that make the last 7 years of me showing up, driving 40 minutes round trip, checking bank statements, coordinating doctors? Was I the devoted daughter? Or was I just the one who could not leave? Ethan said he was coming alone. He said it twice, actually, which was 1 time too many for a statement that should have been simple. Saturday morning housewarming day. I pulled up to the lake house at 8:15 with a trunk full of folding chairs and a sheet cake from the bakery on Main. Ethan's rental car was already in the driveway, a gray sedan with Tennessee plates, and parked behind it was a white SUV I did not recognize. I got out. A man was walking the perimeter of the house with a camera, not a phone camera, a professional DSLR with a wide-angle lens. He was taking photos of the siding, the roofline, the foundation. He had a clipboard tucked under his arm with a printed form attached. On the porch, Dad stood with both hands on the railing. His knuckles were white. He was watching the man the way you watch a dog you are not sure about. Dad. I took the steps 2 at a time. Who is that? He shook his head slowly. Ethan said he is a friend, but he keeps taking pictures. I looked at the clipboard from 10 feet away. I did not need to get closer. The form had a header, a grid for measurements, and a signature block at the bottom. I had processed hundreds of these at the firm. It was a residential appraisal worksheet. I turned to look at the man. He was crouching near the foundation, angling the camera upward. Professional, methodical. He was not here to visit. Stay here, Dad. Lauren, just stay here. I walked through the front door. The lever handle gave without resistance. Inside, the house smelled like coffee and cedar. Dad had been up for hours, and there he was. Ethan sat at the kitchen table. He was thinner than I remembered, wearing a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, trying to look casual. In front of him, a manila folder, a brochure, and 3 documents fanned out like a hand of cards. He looked up. Hey sis, long time. I did not sit down. My eyes went straight to the documents. The first was a pre-printed form with a state seal at the top, a petition for guardianship. The second was a durable power of attorney template, blank signature lines at the bottom. The third was a glossy brochure. Maplewood Senior Living, Nashville, Tennessee. The cover photo showed a white-haired woman laughing near a window. It looked like a hotel. It was not. Sit down, Ethan said. We need to talk about Dad's future. I stayed standing. You have not called him more than 4 times a year in 7 years. That is exactly why I am here now. I have had time to think. Think about what exactly? He leaned back and folded his arms. Lauren, I love Dad, but I have been watching from a distance and I am worried. This house is beautiful. Really it is. But he is 71. He is alone out here. What happens when he falls and no one is around? I am 20 minutes away. And what about at night? At 2 a.m? He said it gently, like a concerned professional giving a difficult recommendation. I had seen this posture before in clients who came into my office with a story that did not match their spreadsheets. What is in the folder, Ethan? He slid it across the table. Just some options. Maplewood is a great facility. I toured it myself. He would have round-the-clock care, a community, activities. You toured a nursing home for Dad without telling either of us. I wanted to have all the information before I brought it up. And the man outside taking pictures of the house. Ethan's expression did not change. He's just a friend. He is holding an appraisal form. The room went quiet. Through the kitchen window, I could see Dad on the porch, still gripping the railing. Ethan held my stare. Then he said something that turned the floor under my feet to ice. I talked to Dad last night for over an hour. He is more open to this than you think. I walked to the porch. Dad was still standing at the railing, staring at the lake. The appraiser had moved to the back of the house. Dad. I kept my voice level. Do you want to go to a nursing home? He did not answer right away. His fingers flexed on the railing. Open, close, open. Ethan says if I stay here, you will wear yourself out. He was not looking at me. He says you are exhausted, that you are doing too much. I felt something crack inside my chest, not anger, recognition, because I understood now what Ethan had done. He had not threatened Dad. He had not raised his voice or made demands. He had done something worse. He had used Dad's love for me as leverage. He had told a 71-year-old man with more pride than anyone I had ever known that his daughter was suffering because of him, that every drive I made, every bank statement I checked, every doctor's appointment I scheduled was draining me, that the best thing Gerald Holloway could do for his little girl was to leave this house and let professionals handle it. Ethan had weaponized my father's selflessness. Dad, I am not exhausted. You work full-time. You come here 3 times a week. That is a lot. It is not a burden, Ethan says. I do not care what Ethan says. My voice was harder than I intended. I caught it and pulled it back. Dad, look at me. He turned. His eyes were red, not from crying, from not sleeping. Ethan had kept him up last night. Do you want to leave this house? He looked past me through the open door, toward the workshop at the end of the hallway. I watched his gaze land on the pegboard wall where his tools hung in a row. No, he said quietly, but I do not want to be the reason you cannot live your life. Behind us, car doors started closing in the driveway. The housewarming guests were arriving. I was standing in my father's kitchen, staring at a stack of guardianship papers I had not known existed until 5 minutes ago. My brother was sitting at the table like he owned the place, and guests were pulling into the driveway right now. I told Dad to go inside and sit down, that I needed to get the chairs from my car. He nodded and shuffled through the door. His shoulders were lower than they had been an hour ago. In the car, I did not touch the chairs. I opened my banking app. Dad's joint account at First Federal. I had read-only access because I had set up his online profile 2 years ago. The transaction history loaded in seconds. The $2,800 I already knew about. The $2,800 I already knew about, but now's in $300 2 days ago. All in Nashville. All ATM withdrawals. All in Nashville. Further ATM stamp backup. Then I scrolled further, and that was when I found the email. Dad had forwarded it to me last week. I had been slammed with a client deadline and had not opened it. His message just said, "Sweetheart, what is this? I do not understand." The attachment was an email from someone named Nolan Voss to Ethan Holloway. Subject line, appraisal appointment confirmed. Mr. Holloway, confirming residential appraisal for the property at 14 Teller Lake Road. Saturday, April 19th at 8 a.m. Deposit received. Client Ethan Holloway. I read it 3 times. Ethan had paid a deposit for a property appraisal on Dad's house, and he had paid for it using Dad's money. The first withdrawal, the $2,800, lined up exactly with a standard appraisal deposit plus a legal consultation fee. He had used Dad's savings to fund the first step of selling Dad's house. The house I built. The house I had put in Dad's name because I trusted that his name meant something. My hands were steady. My voice, when it came, was quiet. Okay. I closed the app, got the chairs, and walked back inside. While I set up chairs in the living room, I made a call I should have made 2 years ago. First Federal's automated system routed me through 3 menus before I reached a person. I stepped onto the back porch out of earshot. I am calling about a joint savings account. My father is the primary holder. I need to understand the access rights for the secondary name on the account. The representative pulled up the file. Both account holders have equal withdrawal privileges. There is no distinction between primary and secondary on a joint account. Can we restrict access for one of the holders? Not without both account holders consenting in person at a branch. Or one holder can choose to close the account entirely and open a new one in their name alone. So my father would need to come in and do that himself. Correct. I hung up and leaned against the porch railing. The math was clear. Dad needed to walk into a bank and remove Ethan's name. But right now, Dad was sitting in the kitchen with Ethan, being told that leaving this house was an act of love. Through the window, I could see them. Ethan was pouring coffee for Dad. He was leaning in, talking softly, the way you talk to someone you are guiding toward a decision you have already made. Dad's hands were wrapped around the blue mug. He was nodding. The account balance was roughly $18,000. Dad had been depositing his pension checks into it out of habit, the same account he had used for years. If Ethan emptied it before I could get Dad to the bank, that money would be gone. Legally spent by a co-holder. Diane Marsh's Buick pulled into the driveway. Behind her, 2 more cars. The housewarming was starting. I went back inside. Ethan looked up and smiled. He was pouring Diane a glass of lemonade before she was even through the door. By noon, there were about 15 people in the house. Neighbors from the Lake Road, a couple of Dad's old friends from the carpentry union. Diane Marsh brought a casserole and a bottle of wine. Tom Fielding from 2 lots over was telling Dad about a bass he had caught last Tuesday. And Ethan was working the room. I watched him from the kitchen doorway with a plate of crackers I was not eating. He moved between groups effortlessly. A handshake here, a laugh there, a hand on someone's shoulder. He was wearing a blue button-down that made his eyes look earnest. He crouched next to Dad's chair and said something that made Dad chuckle. Then he found Diane. "Mrs. Marsh, it has been so long, you look exactly the same." Diane blushed. She and my mother had been close. Ethan knew this. "I am just so glad to be back," he told her, loud enough for the 3 people nearby to hear. "I have been worried about Dad living alone out here. Lauren has been incredible, she really has, but she works full-time. I keep thinking, what if something happens at night? What if he falls and there is no one here?" Diane frowned and nodded slowly. "I have wondered about that myself." "That is all I want," Ethan said, "just to make sure he is safe, whatever that looks like." He was building a story. I could see it taking shape in real time. The devoted son who came home, the practical concerns, the gentle worry. By the time he was done with Diane, he would have 3 or 4 people in this room nodding along. And the worst part was that every word he said sounded reasonable. To anyone who did not know about the appraisal, the guardianship papers, or the $6,900 missing from Dad's account, Ethan Holloway looked like exactly what he was pretending to be. A good son who had finally come home. It happened at 1:15. The room was full, plates on laps, conversations overlapping. Dad was in his chair by the window, telling Tom Fielding about a walnut desk he had built in 1996. Ethan crossed the room carrying a glass pitcher, the heavy one, ceramic, probably 3 pounds full. He held it out to Dad. "Dad, can you pour some water for Mrs. Marsh?" I watched from across the room. My plate went still in my hands. Dad took the pitcher. He wrapped both hands around the handle. His knuckles swelled, his fingers adjusted, and the weight pulled his wrist sideways. Water splashed. A thin stream missed the glass entirely and ran across the table. "Oh, here, Dad, let me." Ethan took it back immediately. Smooth. Practiced. He grabbed a napkin and wiped the table. "It is okay, no worries." But the damage was done. 3 people saw it. Diane Marsh pressed her lips together. Tom Fielding looked at his shoes. "See?" Ethan said to Diane, soft enough to sound private, but loud enough for the people nearby. "This is what I mean. He is struggling." Dad stared at the wet spot on the table. His jaw was tight. I knew what Ethan had just done. There were 6 cups in that kitchen. 4 of them were lightweight plastic. I had bought them specifically for Dad. The ceramic pitcher was the heaviest thing in the cabinet. You would need a full grip and a steady wrist to pour from it. Dad could pour from a bottle, from a carafe, from any of the lightweight containers I had stocked this kitchen with. Ethan had chosen the one thing that would make him fail. He had handed Dad the heaviest pitcher in the kitchen, and he had done it in front of everyone. Diane whispered to the woman beside her, "Poor Gerald." 15 minutes later, Ethan cornered me by the kitchen counter. He kept his voice at that perfect volume, conversational enough to seem natural, loud enough that the 4 people at the dining table could hear every word. "Lauren, can I be honest with you? Go ahead. I think you built this house for yourself, not for Dad." The room did not go silent all at once. It faded. One conversation dropped, then another, then a third. By the time Ethan finished his next sentence, I could hear the clock on the wall. "You want to feel like a good daughter. I understand that. I really do. But Dad needs professionals, medical staff, people who are trained for this, not a house with wide doorknobs in a workshop." My throat tightened because he had just put his finger on the one thing that kept me up at night. The possibility that this house, the 4 years I had spent building it, the $325,000, was never about Dad. That it was about me needing to believe I was enough. I looked at Dad. He was looking at his hands. He did not speak. Ray Clemens, Dad's oldest friend from the union, shifted in his seat. He was watching Ethan with his arms folded, but he did not say anything. No one did. "You are doing your best," Ethan said. "But sometimes love is not enough to keep someone safe." He said it like a eulogy, like the decision had already been made and we were just catching up to it, and I could feel the room tilting, not toward me, toward him. Because Ethan was not wrong about the risks. He was wrong about the solution and the motive. But the risks were real, and everyone in this room was old enough to know it. My father still had not said a word. Ethan did not wait. He went to the table, opened the manila folder, and spread the documents out like a contractor showing blueprints. Dad, I spoke to an attorney in Nashville. It is straightforward. He tapped the guardianship petition. You sign this, and I take over medical and financial decisions. It protects you, and it protects Lauren from burning out. He slid a pen across the table, a nice pen, silver, heavy. He had brought it with him. Maplewood is 20 minutes from my apartment. I would visit every day. They have a woodworking program, a garden. It is not what you think. Dad picked up the pen. His fingers curled around it slowly. I could see the tremor in his index finger. Diane leaned forward from her chair. Maybe Gerald should take some time to think about this. It is a big decision. Ethan turned to her. His smile did not change, but something behind it did. With all due respect, Mrs. Marsh, this is a family matter. The room went cold. Diane sat back. Her mouth was a line. Dad held the pen over the signature block. His hand hovered. He looked at Ethan, who nodded, encouraging, the way you nod at a child learning to write. Then he looked at me. I did not know what was in my face. I was trying to keep it neutral, trying not to look like I was begging. Dad set the pen down on the paper. The tip rested against the signature line. He had not signed, but he had not put the pen away. The room was watching. 15 people. Some were holding plates. Some had forgotten their plates entirely. Ethan said, "Whenever you are ready, Dad." And my father, Gerald Holloway, who had once carried a refrigerator up a flight of stairs by himself, looked at the signature line like it weighed more than anything he had ever lifted. I stared at the pen on the paper, and something inside me fractured. Maybe Ethan was right. The thought arrived fully formed, uninvited, and it sat in my chest like a stone. Maybe I had built this house for me. Maybe every lever handle and grab bar was just a way to prove to myself that I was the good one, the responsible one, the daughter who stayed. Maybe the house was a monument to my own need to be needed. I looked at Dad's hands on the table. They were shaking. The tremor had not stopped since Ethan had handed him that picture. And for one terrible second I thought, what if he cannot live here? What if I am the one who cannot let go? Then Dad's eyes drifted away from the pen, away from Ethan, through the kitchen window, past the living room, down the hall to the workshop. I followed his gaze. The door was open. From here I could see the pegboard wall, the chisels, the hand planes, the marking gauge, the maple bench under the south-facing window. And I remembered the day Dad had walked into that workshop for the first time. His hands had stopped shaking. Not a little. Completely. He had picked up a block plane and held it the way a musician holds an instrument they have not touched in years. His shoulders had dropped. His breathing had changed. This house was not about me. I knew that because his hands had told me. I looked at the pen at Dad's fingers, curled and swollen, resting on the table. Then I looked at Ethan. He was watching Dad with the patience of someone who had already counted the money. I took a breath. I was not going to yell. I was not going to cry. I was not going to beg. I was going to do what I did best. I was going to show the math. Dad! My voice was steady. I was surprised by how steady. Do not sign anything yet. Give me 10 minutes. Ethan's jaw tightened. Lauren, come on. Do not drag this out. 10 minutes. That is all I am asking. I held Dad's eyes until he nodded. Then I walked out the front door, past the guests on the porch, past Nolan Voss loading his camera equipment into the white SUV. I stopped at the edge of the driveway and dialed a number. Janet Perkins picked up on the second ring. I had contacted Janet 3 weeks ago, the same week I had found the $2,800 withdrawal. She was an elder law attorney in the next county. I had found her through a colleague at the firm. I had told her the situation. She had told me to document everything and call her if it escalated. Janet, it is Lauren Holloway. I am at my father's house. My brother is here with guardianship papers. He is trying to get my father to sign right now. Is your father competent? Fully. Doctor's report from 3 weeks ago confirms it. Then the petition has no legal standing unless a court determines otherwise. Has he signed? Not yet. Is anyone else present? About 15 people. It is a housewarming. A brief pause. Can you put me on speaker? That is why I'm calling. Lauren, one more thing. The withdrawals you told me about. If your father did not consent to those transactions, that could constitute elder financial exploitation under your state's code. I want you to know that before you walk back in. I understand. I am ready when you are. I hung up. I stood in the driveway for 5 seconds. The lake was flat and still behind the house. A single heron lifted off the water and disappeared over the tree line. I walked back inside. Every head turned. Dad was still at the table. The pen was still on the paper. He had not signed. I set my phone on the table face up. Before anyone signs anything, I said, I want to show you what I found. The room rearranged itself. People shifted in their seats. Diane Marsh stood up from the couch and moved closer. Ray Clemens uncrossed his arms. I opened my phone and swiped to the first screenshot. This is Dad's joint savings account at First Federal. In the past 3 weeks, there have been 4 withdrawals totaling $6,900, all from ATMs in Nashville. I set the phone down so anyone nearby could see the screen. The numbers were clear. Dates, amounts, locations. Dad, did you authorize any of these withdrawals? No. The word landed like a dropped glass. Small, final. Ethan shifted in his chair. It is a joint account, Lauren. I have access. That is how joint accounts work. You are right. It is a joint account. One that Dad set up when you were 23 for emergencies. I swiped to the next screenshot. But this is not an emergency. This is an email from Nolan Voss, the man who was outside this morning taking pictures of the property to you, confirming a residential appraisal on this house. I turned the phone so the room could see the subject line. Appraisal appointment confirmed. Client Ethan Holloway. You ordered an appraisal on Dad's house without his knowledge, and you paid for it. The deposit. The legal consultation. Using money from his account. Silence. The kind where you could hear people breathing. Ethan's composure held, but barely. A muscle in his jaw moved. I was trying to understand the financial picture. There is nothing wrong with, you did not come home for Dad. I kept my voice flat. No heat, just facts. You came home for the house. Diane Marsh turned to look at Ethan. Her expression had completely changed. Ethan stood up. His chair scraped the floor. The sound was too loud in the quiet room. This is ridiculous. His voice had an edge now. The smooth warmth was burning off like fog. I came here to help. I came here because I am worried about our father. And instead of having a conversation, you are what? Auditing me in front of the neighbors. I am showing what I found. That is all. You do not know what I have been going through. You have no idea. I know you have not been here. I did not raise my voice. I know you do not know his doctor's name. I know you do not know what medications he takes, or that he eats oatmeal every morning because it is easy on his stomach, or that he walks to the lake at 7:15 when the weather is good. I know these things because I have been here every week for 7 years. Diane stepped forward. Her voice was different now. Not sympathetic, not uncertain, direct. Ethan, is that true? You ordered an appraisal on this house? It is none of your business, Mrs. Marsh. Gerald is my neighbor. She did not blink. He has been my neighbor since your mother was alive. That makes it my business. Murmurs rippled through the room. Tom Fielding shook his head slowly. A woman near the back, one of the Lake Road neighbors, put her plate down and crossed her arms. Ethan scanned the room. He was looking for allies, for a nod, a sympathetic face, someone who understood. He did not find one. This is between me and my family, he said, but his voice had thinned. The confidence was leaking out of it. Dad had not moved. He was sitting at the table with his hands flat on the surface. But the pen, the silver pen Ethan had placed so carefully, was no longer touching the signature line. Gerald had pushed it to the edge of the table. I did not know when, but it was there. I picked up my phone. Dad, there is someone I want you to hear. I dialed Janet Perkins and pressed the speaker icon. The ring filled the room. 1 ring, 2, click. This is Janet Perkins. Janet, it is Lauren. I am here with my father and the rest of the family. You are on speaker. Understood. I set the phone on the table between the guardianship papers and the nursing home brochure. Mr. Holloway, Janet said. Her voice was clear and warm, the voice of someone who did this for a living and did it well. I am an elder law attorney. Your daughter asked me to be available today. I want to ask you one question. Do you want to sign the guardianship petition in front of you? Dad looked at the phone, then at me, then at Ethan. No, ma'am. Then no one, including your son, can compel you to sign. Your most recent medical evaluation indicates you are cognitively competent. A guardianship petition requires a court determination, of incapacity. Based on what I've reviewed, that determination would not be granted. Ethan's face lost a shade of color. He opened his mouth. I would also like to address the financial activity, Janet continued. Mr. Holloway, your daughter provided me with bank records showing approximately $6,900 in withdrawals from your joint account over the past 3 weeks. You have stated you did not authorize these transactions. Under your state's Elder Financial Exploitation Statute, unauthorized use of a vulnerable adult's funds by a person in a position of trust may carry both civil and criminal liability. The room was stone. Ethan's hands were in his lap now. His left knee was bouncing. This is a setup, he said. Lauren planned all of this. Janet's voice did not change. Mr. Holloway, your daughter did not plan anything. She asked a legal question. I gave a legal answer. Dad was looking at Ethan, and for the first time today, his eyes were not confused. They were not sad. They were clear. Gerald Holloway pushed his chair back. The legs dragged against the hardwood floor. The sound silenced everything. The last murmur, the last shuffle, the last held breath. He stood up. No one helped him. No one reached for his arm. He rose the way he had risen from every chair for 71 years, slowly, with intention, on his own terms. He looked at Ethan. I kept your picture on the refrigerator. His voice was low, rough, the voice of a man who had been quiet all day and was done being quiet. Every time your sister walked through that door, I asked if you had called. Every time. Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. You come back after 7 years. And the first thing you do? Gerald paused. His hand gripped the edge of the table, not because he was unsteady, because he was holding himself in place. The first thing you do is bring a man to take pictures of my house, to put a price on it, to put a price on me. Dad, I am not done. The room went still. Diane had a hand over her mouth. Tom Fielding was staring at the floor. Ray Clemens was staring at Ethan. Gerald lifted his hand from the table and held it out. It shook. The tremor was visible to everyone in the room. He looked at it, really looked at it, and then he looked back at his son. My hands shake. My knees hurt when it rains. Some mornings it takes me 10 minutes to get out of bed. He lowered his hand. But my mind is mine. And this house is the first place in years where I feel like myself. He turned to me. His eyes were wet. You did not build this for you. I know that. I have always known that. Then he turned back to Ethan. I want your name off my account today. Dad and I were at First Federal by 3 that afternoon. The branch was open until 4 on Saturdays. The woman at the service desk recognized Gerald. He had been banking here for 23 years. I need to remove a name from my joint savings account, Dad said. He was sitting upright in the chair across from her desk. His voice was clear. I will need the name you would like removed. Ethan Holloway. She typed, pulled up the account, printed a form. Dad signed it slowly, carefully, with the same pen he used for everything. His name in blue ink, all capitals, the way carpenters label things. The remaining balance, just under $12,000 after Ethan's withdrawals, transferred into a new individual account in Gerald's name alone. The old joint account closed. The debit card linked to Ethan was deactivated immediately. In the car on the way home, I made one more call. Nolan Voss, the appraiser. Mr. Voss, this is Lauren Holloway. I am Gerald Holloway's daughter. The property at 14 Teller Lake Road. Yes, I was there this morning. The person who hired you, Ethan Holloway, is not the property owner. My father is, and my father did not authorize the appraisal. Silence. Then I was told it was a family matter, that the son was handling it. He is not. The appraisal is canceled. Understood. I will void the report. No additional charges. Thank you. I hung up. Dad was looking out the passenger window at the lake. The surface was still. Late afternoon light turned the water copper. Are you going to press charges? I asked. I had to ask. Dad did not turn from the window. He is still my son. I nodded. I had expected that. Janet Perkins kept the file. The documentation stayed. If Ethan tried anything again, the record was there. But today, Dad had chosen his house. And that was enough. By the time we got back to the lake house, the guests were gone. Plates were stacked in the kitchen. Someone, probably Diane, had washed the serving dishes and left them drying on a towel by the sink. Ethan was on the porch. He was sitting in one of the folding chairs I had brought this morning, smoking a cigarette. I did not know he smoked. Dad went inside without looking at him. The front door closed. The lever handle clicked softly. I stood at the bottom of the porch steps. "How much do you owe?" Ethan did not look at me. He took a drag, exhaled toward the lake. The smoke hung in the still air. $47,000. "So you came here to sell a $325,000 house to pay off a $47,000 debt." He did not answer for a long time. Then, the startup was supposed to work. It was a good idea. The investors pulled out. The partner bailed. I was on the hook for everything, and Dad's house was the easiest exit. I thought he would be better off. No, I did not say it harshly. I said it the way you state a number that does not balance. You thought you would be better off, and you convinced yourself that was the same thing. He ashed the cigarette on the porch railing. His hands were shaking. I noticed because, for the first time, his hands looked like Dad's. "I'm not going to pay your debt. That is not my job. But I know a financial counselor, someone who works with people in your situation. I can send you her name." He stared at the lake. "The rest is yours to figure out." He finished the cigarette, ground it against the railing, and stood up. "I am sorry, Lauren. I believed him." In this exact moment, standing on the porch of the house he had tried to sell, I believed he was sorry. Whether that lasted past Nashville was something I could not control. Ethan. He stopped at the bottom of the steps, car keys in his hand. "You can call Dad. You can visit. The door is not locked." I kept my voice even. "But you will never make a financial decision for him without me knowing. You will never bring paperwork into this house without his attorney reviewing it first. And you will never use his love for me as a reason to take something from him." He turned. His face was hard to read. Anger, shame, exhaustion, all of it layered so tight I could not separate one from another. "And if I do not agree? Then Janet Perkins has a file with your name on it, and the next conversation will not be on a porch." He held my stare for 3 seconds. Then he looked away, walked to the rental car, opened the door, and sat down. I watched the gray sedan back out of the driveway, turn onto the lake road, and disappear behind the tree line. The taillights blinked once at the curve, then nothing. Behind me, the front door opened. Dad stood in the doorway, one hand on the frame. The evening light caught the side of his face, the lines deeper than I remembered. The stubble silver now instead of gray. Will he come back? I stepped up onto the porch and stood beside him. "I do not know, Dad." He nodded. Not like he was accepting it, like he was filing it in the place where he kept the things he could not fix. "But the door is not locked," I said. He looked at me, a long look, the kind that holds more than words can carry. Then he went inside. I heard the kettle click on in the kitchen, the soft thud of a cabinet door, the familiar rhythm of Gerald Holloway making himself a cup of tea in a house that belonged to him. I stayed on the porch until the stars came out. The following Monday, Diane Marsh called me at work. "I wanted you to know," she said. "I told the Fieldings and the Garcias about what happened, not to gossip, because we need to keep an eye out." "Diane, you do not have to." "Hush. Your mother would have done the same for any one of us." By Wednesday, there was a schedule. Diane and 3 other neighbors organized a rotation. Someone stopped by Gerald's house every day, not to babysit, not to hover, just to check in. Monday was Diane with a casserole or leftovers. Tuesday was Tom Fielding, who came to fish off the dock and happened to say hello on his way back. Thursday was Carol Garcia, who brought her 7-year-old grandson. Dad let the boy hold a sanding block and told him about grain direction. Dad did not know they had organized it. He thought he was just popular. And maybe he was, because by the end of the second week, he had been invited to a woodworking group that met at the community center on Saturday mornings. 4 retired men and 1 retired shop teacher. They were building birdhouses for the county park system. Dad showed up with his own chisels and did not say much, but by the 3rd session, he was the one they asked about joinery. It was the first time since Mom died that Dad had a community that was not just me. Diane called me again on Friday. "He was laughing today, Lauren. Like really laughing. He told Tom a joke about a carpenter and a plumber. Tom nearly fell off the dock." I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office and pressed my palm against my eyes. He was going to be okay. Not perfect, not cured, but okay. That was all I had ever wanted. I did not hear from Ethan directly, but the aftermath reached me in pieces. His credit cards were maxed. The startup's LLC had been dissolved 3 months before he showed up at the lake house. The creditors had already started calling. Without the joint account and without a house to sell, his options narrowed to what they always should have been, his own. A mutual cousin told me Ethan had sold his car, a used Audi he had been leasing since the startup days. He was driving a 10-year-old Honda now. He had moved out of his apartment in East Nashville and into a studio off Dickerson Pike, the kind of place with a laundromat in the parking lot. I did not feel satisfaction hearing this. I did not feel anything close to it. I felt a particular numbness that came from watching someone you grew up with pay for choices you had seen coming a decade ago. 3 weeks after the housewarming, Dad got a postcard. No return address, but the postmark said Nashville. The handwriting was Ethan's. Small, tight, leaning left the way it always had. It said, "I am sorry, Dad." 3 words. No explanation, no excuses, no ask. Dad read it standing at the kitchen counter. He read it twice. Then he walked to the refrigerator, took the old magnet from the bait shop, and pinned the postcard next to the photo of Ethan at 10 years old holding the bluegill. He did not say anything about it, not to me, not to Diane. He just left it there. I saw it every time I opened the refrigerator for the creamer, the photo of a boy who used to make my father laugh, and 3 words from the man that boy became. I did not know if Ethan meant them. But Dad kept the postcard, and I kept my mouth shut. One evening in late May, I stopped by after work. The house smelled like sawdust and linseed oil. The workshop door was open. Dad was at the bench. The south-facing window caught the last of the daylight, turning the wood shavings gold on the floor. He was holding something small in his palm, turning it under the light. "What are you making?" He did not answer right away. His thumb moved across the surface of the piece, smoothing an edge, testing the shape by feel, then he held it up. It was a bird, small enough to fit in a closed hand, carved from a scrap of cherry wood. The grain ran lengthwise through the body. The wings were suggested, not detailed. 2 shallow cuts that gave the shape just enough lift. The head tilted slightly to one side. "Mom liked birds," he said. "I remember." He set the bird on the bench, placed it carefully, the way you would set down something fragile. Then he put both hands flat on the maple surface, leaned forward, and cried. No sound at first, just his shoulders moving. Then a breath that shuddered on the way out. And another. And another. I had seen my father hurt before. I watched him break his thumb on a job site and drive himself to the hospital. I watched him stand at my mother's grave in January rain without an umbrella. I had never seen him cry like this. "I am not crying because of Ethan," he said, his voice broken at the seams. "I am crying because I almost let him take this." He lifted one hand and gestured at the bench, the tools, the window, the lake beyond. I put my hand on his back. I did not say anything. There was nothing to say that the room was not already saying. We stayed like that until the light was gone. 6 months later, Dad was still at the lake house. The arthritis had not improved. It would not. His hands shook every morning. His knees swelled after long walks. Some days he could not open the pill bottle and had to use the rubber grip tool I had hung on a hook by the medicine cabinet. But he cooked oatmeal in the morning, a sandwich at lunch, whatever Diane had brought the day before for dinner. He walked to the lake when the weather allowed. He went to the woodworking group on Saturdays. Last month, he made a cutting board for Tom Fielding's daughter. Walnut and maple, herringbone pattern. Tom said she cried when she saw it. I visited 3 times a week. We drank coffee on the porch. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we did not. I had stopped checking on him and started visiting him. There was a difference, and Dad could feel it. Janet Perkins drafted a durable power of attorney for Gerald, naming me as his agent. Dad read every word. He asked Janet 2 questions. Then he signed it at her office in front of a notary, with full capacity documented. It was airtight. If anything happened to Dad, the decisions were mine. Not because I claimed them, because he chose. Ethan called sometimes. Dad picked up about half the time. The conversations were short, weather, sports. Nothing that mattered and everything that did. Ethan had not visited. He had not asked for money. Whether that was growth or just distance, I could not tell. I did not build Dad a house so he could live longer. The arthritis would do what it did. The body would do what bodies do. I built it so he could live like himself. So he could open a door with one hand. So he could make a bird from a piece of cherry wood. So he could sit by a lake that did not ask him for anything. That was not a gift. That was respect. If you are out there right now taking care of someone, a parent, a grandparent, someone who raised you and cannot quite do everything they used to, I want you to hear this. Someone will tell you that you are doing too much. Someone will say you are burning out, that there are professionals for this, that you should step back and let someone else handle it. And maybe some of that is true. Maybe you do need help. But if the reason they are telling you to step back is so they can step in and take something, that is not concern. That is positioning. Love is not about control. It is not about deciding what is best for someone and then building a case until they agree. Love is giving someone the space to live on their own terms. Even when their hands shake, even when it scares you, even when it would be easier to take the wheel. My father sits in his workshop every evening. Some nights he carves. Some nights he just sits with a cup of tea and watches the light change over the lake. The bird he made for Mom is on the windowsill now, next to a piece of driftwood he found on the shore. His door has a lever handle. It opens with one hand, 1 second, no resistance, and it is never locked. Ethan called last Sunday. Dad talked to him for 12 minutes. When I asked what they talked about, Dad said, nothing important. But he was smiling when he said it. I do not know what happens next. I do not know if Ethan comes back or if Dad's health holds or if the choices I have made are the right ones. But I know this. My father is living in a house that was built for him, not around him. And every morning he opens his own front door. That is enough. That is my story. And I know some of you have your own version. Maybe you are the one who has been showing up every week, doing the work no one sees. Maybe you are watching someone you love get talked into something that does not feel right. Or maybe, and this takes courage to admit, maybe you are the one who disappeared, and you are wondering if it is too late to come back. Whatever your story is, I want to hear it. If this story reminded you of someone in your family, the one who shows up and does the work quietly, or the one who shows up when there is something to take, drop a comment. Tell me which one you are. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is the time. I share stories like this every week. Stories of patience, of proof, of people who were underestimated and found a way to stand up. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you do not miss the next one. Take care of your people, and do not forget to take care of yourself. I am Lauren. This is the Quiet Revenge Book. I will see you in the next story.